Hi, my name is Martha Amadon, and I was actually born Martha Byington in March 28th, 1834. And I was born in a log cabin in Bucksbridge, New York. I was the very first daughter born to John and Catherine Byington, and my father was both a commercial farmer and a Methodist circuit riding preacher, and my mom was a school teacher. When I was a teenager, I converted to Adventism, and I was baptized in the river with my mother and my father and my brother. Now, when I was a young girl, I actually saw Ellen White in vision several times, and I very much believed in her prophetic gift from God. Like my mother, I decided to become a teacher. And at 19, I established the first known Sabbath-keeping Adventist school that was in the parlor of a man named Aaron Hilliard. And so imagine I'm a school teacher sitting at my desk, and I have my glasses down like this so I can be a school teacher. And I had students that ranged from 2 years of age to 14 years of age. That's like younger than the adventurers, the youngest adventurer, or younger than that, and as old as some of you guys here. It was very hard to teach that. It was very challenging to teach such a range of children that age. But imagine you're teaching your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s, and you're also having to teach grammar and writing and advanced math all at the same time. So it was very challenging. But do you know, all of the children loved to hear Bible stories. No matter what age they were, they enjoyed to hear stories. And I very much loved my teaching job. But I decided that I needed to have some more formal education. So I enrolled in a teacher program at St. Lawrence Academy. And when I was done with that kind of training, I actually boarded or lived with James and Ellen White, and I tutored their sons, Henry, Edison, and Willie. So I became kind of like their teacher too. And I traveled with my father throughout all of Michigan, and I would like to play the organ, the pump organ, and I sang duets with my father. Unlike my parents and my siblings, I became a vegetarian in 1859. So that was something that I was very proud of. As a good writer, I love to write stories, and I was a teacher. You know, teachers generally can be very good writers. And I sent several of my short stories and articles to the Adventist Review and the Sabbath Herald and the Youth's Instructor. So kind of like the magazines that you guys get every week. I wrote things for those. I was outgoing, and I enjoyed visiting my family and my friends, and I enjoyed leading out in Sabbath school and getting up in front of church and leading out. And I also was a very good seamstress. So I liked to sew garments for other people, and I loved to sit down and write letters. So those were the kind of things that I enjoyed. And so because I enjoyed these things, James White hired me to work at the Review. And I began to write a different kind of letter. I began to write some letters to George Amadon, and pretty soon we were married. And eventually we had 2 daughters, Katie and Grace. And then we also adopted a son, and his name was Claude. All during the 1800s, I remained active in the Battle Creek Church. I regularly attended Sabbath school and church and prayer meetings and testimonies and socials and women's gathering. I was very active in the church. I sold medical books, and I sold Review and Herald almanacs, and I regularly wrote articles. I really like to write. But I also like to do other fun things, like I would like to go plan family picnics to this lake that was called Go Quack, and I kept the whites informed of all the things that were happening. If there was a birth or a death or someone had a major event in their life, all the local things happening, I kept the whites abreast of what was happening. And I also helped take care of James White after his first stroke. So I was really good at being a good caregiver, and that was in 1865. In November of 1870, me and 7 other women formed this group, and this group was called the Maternal Society, and that was in 1871, and we provided food and clothing and money to needy college students. So you know how when you go to school, sometimes you don't have all the things, you don't have a lot of money. So we helped the local students, and I very much loved that time when I got to befriend the students and the people, the young people that were going to school. And in 1874, I found another calling that God had for me, and it was a society called that was eventually renamed to be Dorcas Society. And it included more than 20 women who were single and married women who met. And these women did a couple different things. I have props back here. They would cook meals, and they would provide food and clothing for people. So they would gather up clothes. You guys have heard of this in our days, right? They collect up clothes and food for people that need them, and they collect off the needed items for people, and then they find people that need them and they hand those things out. And so that's what we found. We found the people in our neighborhoods who had needs, and we sewed and we cooked food and we gathered things up for the poor and the widows and the orphans in our very own neighborhoods. And I served as this organization's first president. I helped to take care of my aging parents during their death as well. And later, when my parents were no longer with me, I rented out my extra rooms to those college students that I told you about that I loved to be around. And so I would rent out my extra rooms to college students in Battle Creek College. And you know what? I had a horse, and my horse's name was Kitty. Isn't that a fun name for a horse? Kitty was my favorite horse. And Kitty would help me get around to make my missionary visits, which were actually social calls with spiritual benefits around the city. And as I got older, my daughter had to take care of me. And when she was taking care of me in my house, a lot of those college students that I had helped out over the years, they had grown up, but the new college students would come over and visit with me when I was lonely and in my house all by myself. And so they would come in and have frequent college visits from the college students, and then I could tell them firsthand all these stories about the people that they were learning about, and that I had these Adventist pioneers that I had known personally. I could tell all kinds of really good stories to these college students. All right, so breaking character. Martha Amadon died January 2nd, 1937. She was 102. Her last words were, "I love him and I can't wait to see him." Martha Byington Amadon was remembered primarily for teaching the first homeschool sponsored by Seventh-day Keeping Adventists. In her own way, Martha laid the foundation for Seventh-day Adventist elementary education. She enjoyed children and youth. She was a giving, caregiving person all throughout her life. She was known for her welfare work of the church, for forming the Maternal Society, which was later named Dorcas Society. And today that society is called the Community Service Centers, or globally it's called the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, and it exists in more than 130 countries. So that is my pioneer, Martha Amadon.